All right. In 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught! Jelani Woods! Touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up.
Got it!
Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. Another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you here on this Wednesday. It's November 29th. Thanks a lot for being with us, no matter how you're listening, whether on radio down in our river country on 97.7 ESPN The Ref in Evansville, or up in the region, 104.7, 12:30 a.m. WJOB, the voice of the region, or in Fort Wayne on the only sports station in Fort Wayne, 1380 The Fan. And make sure you keep it tuned on 1380 The Fan for Caleb and Kenny in the morning. And right after Indiana Sports Beat, you've got the Sports Rush. So keep it tuned right there. Lots to get to today on the program. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, and the Hall of Famer Rick Bozich. Lots to talk about, of course. Indiana in search for a football coach. And that search is going wide. This is a wide net search, people. The Pacers will be hosting the quarterfinals in the NBA in-season tournament. That's an achievement, man. We're talking about the Pacers here. And that's pretty damn good. Indiana basketball back on the court on Friday to open Big Ten play against Maryland. So a good challenge for this squad. See kind of where they are. Men's soccer, Indiana. What is today's? Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow, right? They play tomorrow in South Bend against Notre Dame. And if they can get past the Fighting Irish, which I am hoping they do, they will make it to their 23rd College Cup. Unbelievable if that were to happen, but I am really hoping it happens because this year's College Cup is in Louisville, Kentucky at the Lynn Family Stadium there right off of the interstate. But I was just started to think last night, I'm like, wait a minute, what are the dates? So I pulled it up and damn it. The first game is on December 8th, Friday, December 8th. So that means it's going to be a very late night drive, if that turns out to be the case, for me down to Atlanta, as Indiana will take on Auburn in basketball the next day, and then hightail it back to Louisville for the finals if Indiana can make it to the championship, which is December 11th. But hopefully that all falls into place, and hopefully that all is needed. But that would be a lot of action going on, peeps. So we got a lot coming up in the next several days to follow. Purdue was in action last night, I believe, as well. So we'll check the basketball scores, who did what, who was playing last night. Texas Southern took on Purdue up in West Lafayette. Did not go well for them. 99-67. Purdue wins that one. Kentucky throttles Miami. 95-73. That was a close game at the half. Marquette, number 3 Marquette, 93-56 over Southern. Number 5 Kansas, 71-63 over Eastern Illinois. That's a little tight. Kansas is looking a little tight this year so far, but I'm sure that that's going to change very soon. Baylor erupts for 108 points as they knock off Nichols 108-70. Gonzaga, number 11, Gonzaga, 81-65 over Cal State Bakersfield. Georgia Tech, the Rambling Wreck, knocks off number 21, I should say, Mississippi State, 67-59. And number 23, Alabama, they go down at home to Clemson, 85-77. So a couple of the SEC schools that were ranked taking losses already here in the early rounds of the college basketball season. How are you? How is everybody? We appreciate you. Doug, how are you doing, sir? Jumping on from down there near Lagodi. Fred, always on the hook. Las Vegas Larry. Robert says he saw that Kentucky pounded Miami last night. Looks like they will be in the mix again. There is no justice. Hey, man, guess who led the way for Kentucky? Reed Shepherd, a freshman, looking really, really good. He had a tremendous night. He looked like a junior, man. He was rolling. He played very, very well for the Wildcats. So they're getting it together. And you can only hope that Indiana has that same fortune as the season continues to progress. You saw some improvement with Mackenzie Mbako in the last game, but yet he still went 1 of 7 from 3 from deep. Yet he was able to managed to score 18 points. So we'll talk about that as well as much, much more. Jamie says, good morning from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Doug, as I said. Philip asked, how is Georgia number 1 and Michigan has the best win by a mile? Well, we'll talk about that because I disagree with that. He's talking about the college football playoffs, and that's something else we have to talk about. The college football playoffs, the newest one came out. Philip says Braden Smith, 2 rebounds short of a triple-double with 10 minutes left last night, played another minute. How about that? Taterology saying the same thing. That's not good news if you are going to be playing Purdue, because Braden Smith is a guard. And that is where Fozan jumping on. How are you, sir? Mike as well. How are you, Mike? Mike Shinnefield. Braden Smith, one of the guards that was a freshman and made freshman mistakes last year, just couldn't come through quite, but he's no longer a freshman. And 19 points, 9 rebounds, and 10 assists he had in that game last night. You want to talk about an unbelievably well-rounded game? Holy crap. 19 points and 10 assists would have been amazing. Would have been stupendous. But he added 9 rebounds. That's something Indiana is not getting. Their guards to rebound. As a matter of fact, they're not getting guards to do much of anything. The guards are not scoring. The guards are not rebounding. And that is the difference between Indiana being an upper-level team and being where they are right now, because they have tremendous talent and play. Of course, with Kalel Well and a commercial started playing in my ear and I lost my train of thought. But Malik Renew, the sad part is those are Indiana's best shooters from outside right now. Still waiting on Mackenzie Mbako to get going in that regard. But we'll talk about all of that much more. Dylan Sinn on the program today, like I said. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Rick Bozich. Man, so much to talk about. And I'm sure you guys can put more up to talk about. The coaching search for Indiana football goes on. And I'll be honest with you. I was tracking a private plane, or I've been tracking a private plane that is based in Bloomington yesterday, and I watched it go from Bloomington to Atlanta to Cordell, Georgia, to Florida, and I believe it is currently still in South Carolina, where who they're meeting with in South Carolina, I'm not sure, but Dave Clawson, the coach at Wake Forest, has been mentioned. The coach at Texas San Antonio, and Tom Herman, the current FAU coach, former Houston and Texas coach, is a name, and this plane did land in Florida. James Madison coach, also, as he should be. As I said, that's a name. I mean, man, they have risen. Hell, they just joined Division I and could have played in a much better situation this year. But they weren't allowed to because of that rule. The Pacers, how about them? They'll be Monday night. They will begin hosting the quarterfinals of the NBA in-season tournament. It's taken a month of group stages for this to get set up. They'll be hosting the Boston Celtics at 7:30, and then the Pelicans will travel to face Sacramento that same night. Tuesday, we'll see a pair of stage rematches with the New York Knicks playing at Milwaukee. Antetokounmpo. And then Phoenix will travel to Los Angeles to take on LeBron and the Los Angeles Lakers. So this will be this is kind of cool. This is in-season tournament. I got to tell you, I haven't been able to watch any of it, but it makes it more exciting, and I think it was a very, very smart move by the NBA. The winners of each of these quarterfinal games will advance to the semis, which is December 7th at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. So this is going to be taking place on site. No more home games with that. The Eastern Conference teams will square off at 5 p.m., followed by the Western Conference teams at 9 on that date. And that's a busy week right there, December 7th. And it just dawned on me last night because I started thinking ahead that hopefully Indiana men's soccer team wins tomorrow at Notre Dame as they take on their third-ranked road opponent in this tournament. They had the first game at home, which they were able to, first match at home, which they were able to win. But they've had to go on the road ever since then. They had to go to Wake Forest and play seeded Wake Forest and win. Then, of course, wow, I'm drawing a blank on who they just defeated. Virginia. At Virginia. Now they have to go to Notre Dame. That would be the absolute, I'll have to look back, but that might be the hardest route Indiana would have ever, if they're able to make it to the College Cup, the absolute hardest route they've ever been able to make. We'll check all that out and lots more coming up. We've got more, as I said, back with it as we take a break from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
All right, people, for those of you listening now, that means you're listening on YouTube. If you have not subscribed, please do. It doesn't hurt, doesn't cost anything, and it makes Dylan Sinn happier than you can imagine. Oh, there's Dylan Sinn. How are you, sir?
Good morning, gentlemen.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good.
Man, there's just a lot to talk about, but first and foremost, I guess the search for an Indiana football coach. I've been tracking a private plane for the last 2 days.
Sure.
That is Bloomington based. It left Bloomington actually on November 18th, and I'm trying to figure out, is this too early? Would they have had this meeting? It was November 18th, a Saturday.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Or no, it was a Friday because
okay.
It was the 26th was the game.
Do you think that they would have had a meeting that soon? The decision was already made. I know that.
Yes. Maybe, but here's the thing. Often those private plane tracker things are not like they cover their tracks a little bit better than that. I think maybe not. Maybe at IU they just kind of let it get out there. But the conventional wisdom is that those plane trackers are not really an accurate representation of where the athletic director is going.
Right. Well, this actually came to me from another source.
Okay.
About it was another rival site thinking that they had gotten a call that their coach was in Indiana, but they sent me just a photo thing of these two flights. And I took the tail number off of one of those flights and just started following that plane.
Okay.
And that plane went to Columbus, Ohio, near Columbus. None of these are landing in big cities. They're all landing at smaller airports outside. It landed in Batavia, Ohio, which is near Columbus.
Sure.
Yeah, it would have been Justin Fry, of course.
We need to go live. You want to check this out? We'll go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Hope you're having a good start to your week. We're at the midway point, and it's all downhill from here. Don't worry. And to prove that, I'm here with you. So that shows you. But we've got Dylan Sinn, rather, from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Jim. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Love it. Couldn't start a Wednesday without you, man. It's been a wild and wacky week in sports, as they used to say. Lots going on. Indiana basketball, of course. They've got a game coming up again. They start Big Ten play on Friday with a game against Maryland. But all attention really is focusing right now on Indiana and their search for a football coach and who that will be for a number of reasons, because this time they can't screw this up. This is one that they really have to hit on. I'm not saying they have to get a guy that's going to lead them to national prominence, because that's a hard route to run, but they've got to get a guy that can get them to competitive prominence, that to where they're like, I saw it was Mike, maybe it was Mike DeCourcy who made the comment that when you have perennial winners like Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, you're going to have perennial losers. Well, I think that you need to have a rotation of losers. Some years, some teams are just going to have a bad year, but you cannot be that team every year. You've got to be a team that that can rise up, that every now and again can knock off one of these teams. And Indiana used to be that in Bill Mallory's days. They were competitive. Hell, they beat Michigan and Ohio State in the same year. Beat Ohio State in back-to-back years. But that's long ago. We're talking 30 years ago now. And the sport has kind of left Indiana behind, mostly of their own making. But with the portal and NIL and the right coach, I think that they have the opportunity, even though that it looks like they're losing most of their team right now through the portal. That'll go the other way once you have a coach and the right coach. But the names that have been thrown out, there have been so many. I mentioned in the break, I've been tracking a private plane that I had gotten information on from something else, and I took the tail number and started tracking it, and it's been over near Columbus, Ohio. It has been to Atlanta. It then went to Cordell, Georgia. Then it went to Florida, and it is currently now sitting in South Carolina. And it may not mean jack squat. But there's no doubt that these meetings are taking place, and they have to take place quickly. So there may be some credence to this. The first thing I want to put to bed is this John Gruden thing. That ain't going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen. Yes, he has ties to IU. Yes, he is interested in the job because he's interested in any job. He wants to get back into football because he was drummed out. Now, did he get kind of screwed over a little bit? Yeah, because he had some personal stuff made public. Was what he said atrocious? Of course it was. Absolutely. But those who live in glass houses don't throw stones, man. And it's been a decade. Has he, been remorseful? Has he come to a different belief? And it's easy to be mad and send stuff out like that when you think it's private. I get that. But with all that, I don't think that John Gruden is a candidate here. He's not a college coach. They need a guy who is into the college game today because the college game has changed.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. I personally, I do not think that they're going to hire John Gruden. I don't think that's going to happen. We just had an example of this. Like, it would basically be like when Illinois hired Lovie Smith, except with a more controversial person. They're not going to do that. That didn't work for Illinois. Indiana would not do it. I think I give Scott Dolson more credit than that. I know there are some people who don't. I know there are some people who think Scott's just going to see a shiny object dangling in front of his face and go get it. I don't think that's what's going to happen. Nor should it. I do not think it would work. Quite frankly, I'm going to lay my cards on the table. I think it would be a bad hire. I don't think it would work. I think it would be embarrassing for all parties that it would last 3 years and that would be it. But yeah, there are names out there. I do think Scott Dolson is under some pressure now because yesterday there was a candidate that came off the board that I think a lot of people would have liked to have seen at IU. And again, cards on the table, I would have liked to have seen at IU. I think he would have done a good job. And that's Sean Lewis, who ended up being the coach at San. He ended up taking the job at San Diego State. That's a good candidate. That is a great hire for San Diego State. That would have been a very good hire at Indiana. If you are Scott Dolson and you now cannot beat the hire that San Diego State made, what does that say about Indiana? And what does it say about you, Scott Dolson, quite frankly?
Yeah,
people were being really weird about Sean Lewis and what he brings to the table. This is important to understand. I think people kind of miss this, and I don't really think that they miss it. I think they're being obtuse and miss it on purpose almost. But everything in college football is about context, right? You can't compare records from one place to another and expect to get a clear picture of what's going on. Sean Lewis went 14-21 at Kent State. He went 7-6, 7-7, 5-7 in his last 3 non-COVID years. Does that sound impressive on paper? No. Is that impressive? Yes, it is. The Kent State had been to 3 bowl games in their entire history before he took over. He took them to 2 in 3 seasons with a COVID year sandwiched in the middle. He is a terrific coach. He will be extremely successful at San Diego State. I am laying down a marker on that right now. All the stuff about Darrell Hazel. Well, Darrell Hazel had 1 good season at Kent State, and then Purdue jumped to hire him. And there's a reason Purdue jumped to hire Darrell Hazel after 1 year at Kent State, after 1 good year at Kent State. But Sean Lewis had 3 to 4 good years at Kent State. It's impossible. It has never happened in the history of the program. And Sean Lewis did it. And then he went and built an offense at Colorado that was very, very good, despite having, as Deion Sanders said, no linemen. They had no linemen on that roster, and Sean Lewis built an offense that could move, despite having Deion Sanders apparently hanging over his shoulder at all times. So, yes, that would have been a very good hire for IU. And the San Diego State went and got him. Good for San Diego State. If you're Scott Dolson, you got to do better than that now. So there is some pressure on him now. Like when I wrote up my coaching, like kind of here are some candidates for IU, I did a pro and con for each candidate. I had Sean Lewis as a candidate, and my con was I think he might get better offers. I think like maybe a Houston would want to hire Sean Lewis, that kind of thing. There's someone that could trump IU with some more money or some more resources or something like that to get him. San Diego State is not that. They are a G5 team, and they're broke. We know they're broke because they desperately tried to get into the Pac-12 earlier this year, and they couldn't. And that was before the Pac-12 fell apart, obviously, over the summer. But San Diego State does not have money. They are not flush with cash. They didn't outbid IU for this coach. IU just decided to pass on Sean Lewis, and San Diego State got him instead. And so if you're Scott Dolson, better go make a good hire now. So that there is some pressure here now that there was not before yesterday.
Yeah, he was no doubt. Sean Lewis was looking to get out of his situation at Colorado.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Under Deion. He went there as the offensive coordinator, which he still was, but he had been demoted in the middle of the season, which is a little ridiculous. I think.
The rumor was it was because he was looking for other jobs. He was like interviewing for jobs. That was the rumor, was that he was demoted because he was interviewing for jobs during the season.
That makes sense. Another name that had been floated, and he took himself out of the running, Dan Mullen, said that he is not heading to Indiana, so you can take that off. But another name that I don't know if there's been any contact with, and maybe it's difficult because of where they are in the middle of their season right now, but Grubbs from Washington, Kalen DeBoer's offensive coordinator. I'm telling you, anybody that's been under Kalen DeBoer for, I don't know, 5 years or longer?
It's been longer. He's followed Kalen DeBoer everywhere. He was with him in the mid-2000s in Sioux Falls, Iowa. He's been with Kalen DeBoer all the way through.
I want that man. I would want that man if I were. I mean, if Kalen DeBoer trusts him to run his offense, I think that's a great sign of confidence, because Kalen DeBoer is an offensive mind, but he trusts somebody else to do that and to make those calls. And obviously, when you have an offense that leads the nation, that ain't bad. And so I know that's probably tough to talk to someone like that, who they're in the midst of a college football playoff run. They have to win one more game, and they're in the college football playoffs. And it's not just one more game. They have to play Oregon, which they're not favored in that game. And I understand that. But that's someone who is very interesting to me. If I were from a fan, if I was looking at it from a fan standpoint, boy, I would really, really not mind having him. I know that Wake Forest, Dave Clawson has been looked at. UTSA, Texas San Antonio's what's his name? Jeff Traylor.
Jeff Traylor. Yeah. I think that the problem with Traylor is that he's going to get if he's leaving for Houston, not for IU.
Well, speaking of Houston, another very, very intriguing name, Tom Herman, the former Houston and Texas coach, now at FAU, which that plane I was tracking landed in Florida, by the way. Tom Herman has to be a name that's very high on this list because of his experience, because of what he's done, and the coach of James Madison.
Yeah.
You know, James Madison is a carbon copy of Buffalo from a couple of years ago. I don't know what they put in the water in Buffalo a couple of years ago, but all of a sudden you saw them ranked in football and basketball, which was nuts in the same season. Of course, their basketball coach ended up going to Alabama, Nate Oates.
Their football coach ended up at Kansas. That's where the Kansas coach
Lance
came from.
Leopold.
Lance Leipold was at Buffalo.
My God.
He was at Buffalo before he was at Kansas. Yeah.
See what great hire, man! Great hires. Lance Leopold is a guy fans would love to have. Kansas is a fun program. I don't know that you can get him out of there. He's probably locked up. Not sure.
I think there are bigger jobs. They're going to make a run at him. I think.
James Madison is the new Buffalo.
Yeah.
So that coach there, that is someone you absolutely have to look at. Anybody that can take a team that just moved up to Division I, but would have been eligible for bowl consideration because they won, man. They were ranked, and I'm like, how the hell does James Madison do this?
Yeah.
It's coaching. If you don't think coaching makes that much of a difference, you don't get it, because I promise you, guys like Nate Oates, he's doing the same thing at Alabama. Alabama sucked at basketball for a long time. He gets there, bam. He did it at Buffalo. He's done it at Alabama. Same thing with James Madison. When you have success in a school like that, it's not by accident. So very good coaching. So Indiana has a lot of good choices here. Yeah. And I'm glad to see that they're spreading this net. Justin Fry is while he has great connections to Indiana, no head coaching experience, and I just don't see him as a true candidate for this job.
No coordinator experience, right? Like that's the other part of this is he's the associate head coach at Ohio State. He's the offensive line coach. I think Justin Fry would be a good hire eventually if the current hire doesn't work out and whoever is the Indiana AD in 4 years decides to try again. I think Justin Fry is probably a guy that you look at. I don't think right now. I think the same about Jamarcus Shepard, by the way, the Indiana native who coached receivers at Purdue and now is kind of the number 3 on offense for Washington. It's DeBoer and then Grubb, and then Jamarcus Shepard is the pass game coordinator and wide receivers coach there. I think he would be a good hire in 4 years, basically. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but I am a Fort Wayne guy, so I can talk about this. If whatever coach they do hire, I think should make an immediate call to Jamarcus Shepard and see if he wants to be the offensive coordinator. I think that would be a terrific hire. But I do think to go back to so you talked about Curt Cignetti, who is the coach at James Madison. I think would be a terrific hire. He's a little bit older. I do think there's part of that. I wonder if IU is looking for someone a little bit younger. But again, same thing though would be Willie Fritz at Tulane, right? He's 63. Is he looking for one final job before he goes? A name that I've been really intrigued by that I think you have to make the call and see if he's interested. And see if he would be able to do it health-wise is Jerry Kill from New Mexico State, former coach of Minnesota. Yeah.
But see, the thing with him is his health. He's had such health issues.
He's been healthy for the last several years. He hasn't had any issues at New Mexico State. The question is, would going to IU be stressful enough that it would bring those issues back? I think you have to make
it would be
right. I think you have to make the call though, because he is, of every coach in college football, he has done what IU needs done the most times, which is he has taken a program that is struggling, that is moribund, that is going nowhere. He has taken programs like that over and over and over again and turned them into not only solid programs, but big time winners. He did it at Southern Illinois. He did it at Northern Illinois. He did it at Minnesota. He is doing it at New Mexico State, which is one of the hardest programs to win at in all of college football. New Mexico State, before Jerry Kill got there, had not so much as won 8 games since 1965. And this year they have won 10 and are going to a bowl game and the conference championship game with a chance to get to 11 or 12. The guy is a magician. And so, yes, his health problems have been what they've been. It stinks for him. He probably would be a head coach at a blue blood program right now. He probably would be the coach at Michigan right now. If he was healthy throughout his career, or Ohio State or something like that. He's that good of a coach. But I think if you're IU, if you at least give him a call and say, hey, is this something you're interested in? Could you handle it health-wise? And see what he says. I like Grubb. I like Grubb, like you said. Tom Herman is another one. I don't know. I obviously you like what he did at Houston, and I think people are kind of getting confused. It's like, well, why do we want a coach who got fired at a bigger program?
Shaka Smart got fired at Texas. What's he doing?
So that's part of it. But the other thing is, Tom Herman did not get fired at Texas for on-field performance. I think that's important to understand. He didn't get they weren't great at Texas, but he won 10 games with them. They were 7-3 in the COVID year. His final year there, he was building something, and he got fired because he clashed with the boosters over, in part, their fight song. He didn't like their fight song. He thought it was offensive. He wanted to change it.
Oh yeah, it's got a little racist overtones, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And so the boosters said, no, we're not going to do that. And that was they between that and the fact that he hadn't really gotten it revved up there yet, they fired him. Not entirely over that, but it was a clash with the boosters. It wasn't on-field performance. He was great at Houston. He was a great best in the country offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Tom Herman was basically the Ryan Grubb of 2015, where it's like, if you're looking to hire a coordinator who should become a head coach because of how good they've done offensively, it's Tom Herman, right? So he has the resume. He's won at places that were difficult to win. He took over that Houston job when it was really floundering, and he figured it out. Now he's taken over at FAU. I don't know if he would take this job at Indiana. He's turned down other jobs. I think he's looking to get back into a really big job. He plans to turn Florida Atlantic into a winner and then go to a significant brand, which I think he could get. But I think that's a guy you call. I think you're absolutely right.
And let me put another one to bed real quickly, because I'm not even going to waste time on it. But I just saw someone say this, and I'd heard this, Robert. One of the rumors he had that IU went down the hall and interviewed Rod Carey. That would be the Indiana thing to do. It would have been the Indiana thing to do. It's what they did last time. I guarantee you that ain't happening.
Yeah.
He is not a candidate for this head coaching job. So get that off your mind. It's not even real. So forget about that.
And to be clear, I believe that they interviewed him. That's just it's what you do.
I think that was
right?
a courtesy.
Exactly. It was a courtesy. And the thing is that you said that would have been the Indiana thing to do, but the Indiana thing to do would have been to not fire Tom Allen and save the money. So if you don't fire Tom Allen and pay $15.5 million and pour this money into NIL, if you're just going to hire Rod Carey, you don't do that, right? And
now one thing I don't understand is, they knew good and damn well that Tom Allen was likely on his way out when they gave Rod Carey a 3-year contract. That that is more Indiana. That is more Indiana. Why in the hell do you give a coach in the middle of a lame duck season a 3-year contract?
I think it was to give him. First of all, I wonder if Rod Carey wouldn't do it unless there was some kind of security. They wanted someone to finish out the season as the offensive coordinator who might actually know what they were doing, and Rod Carey wouldn't do it unless they gave him a little bit of security and something to send him on his way. I do wonder if at midseason Tom Allen wasn't entirely done yet. I think, me personally, I thought there was a chance that they could figure it out late in the year. If they had gotten to 5-7, I think Tom Allen probably stays another year. And I don't think that was off the table in the middle of the season. I think there was chances to do that. So I think they were basically giving him, okay, Tom, you got one more shot. Here's your guy. This is your third offensive coordinator in 3 seasons. Figure it out for the last 2 months of the season, and you get another shot. So that was my guess, is that's what happened.
We could take this conversation on and on. Let's take a quick break so we don't miss anything, and we'll continue this. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette is with us right now. Make sure you're giving him a follow. And if you're listening on the Fan in Fort Wayne on 1380, make sure you're a subscriber to the Journal-Gazette. You have to keep local papers alive and keep the journalism going. Great people like Dylan Sinn. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Lance Leopold is in his 60s? He's not that old, is he?
No, he is. He was at smaller schools for a very, very long time. And he got hired at Buffalo because they reached down to the lower levels for someone, because that's what you do at Buffalo, and winners win. But like that, I wouldn't be mad if Indiana hired an FCS coach. I looked at
Jason, the right one.
Jason Eck at Idaho, I think would be a decent hire. It worked for Northwestern. Northwestern went and hired North Dakota State's offensive coordinator, and look what happened.
Yeah, I don't think Mike Hart is on the list. He is a Michigan man, and he would, at any opportunity, he would bolt.
I think Mike Hart thinks he might get the Michigan job in 2 months.
You know what? I didn't even think about that. That's right, because Harbaugh's not going to be there.
Harbaugh's not going to be there, and I don't think that Sharon Moore is going to get the job, because I think that he's involved in this stuff.
You mean the guy that cried? Was that the guy that cried on TV and used the F-bomb?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the reason he's not going to get the Michigan job. I think
but that shows you how ridiculous he is. That's someone who can't control themselves in public, man.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he's very likely somewhat involved in the sign stealing stuff, right? Like there's been no reporting on that. It's just kind of like he probably had some kind of knowledge of it, and you're not going to be able to hire him in that case. So Michigan's going to have to go somewhere else, I think.
It's time for us to go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, here on this Wednesday, November 29th. Thanks a lot for being along for the ride. Dylan Sinn, the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, with me. And we have been discussing Indiana's open football coaching position. I don't want to ignore everything else that went on. Purdue with a big win last night. Gigantic game for Braden Smith. One rebound short of a triple-double. Yep. And what do you have? 19 points, 19 and 10 assists
and 9 rebounds. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was
but see, you could have stopped right there and said, "Damn, 19 points and 10 assists. Woo! What a night he had." But then you add 9 rebounds. That might be more rebounds than IU's guards have had combined all year.
Yeah. And what do you know? When a guard gets a rebound, he's able to just turn around and sprint the floor and get you easy baskets. It really is a simple game. It's pretty simple.
Zach Osterman, our friend from the Indy Star, he'll be with us this Friday, put out a text probably 11 hours ago that says he had a little late night scoop. Partner collectives and fundraising will support IU's next football coach with a $3 million NIL boost. That is gigantic because I don't think Indiana football has had a total of $3 million in NIL up till now, if you added it all together.
Yeah, it's huge. If you are going to be a serious football program, you need to get donors to invest in the program. That's just how it works. That's how football works. If you want to be good, you got to spend money. Now, my question is, where the heck was this the last 2 years when Tom Allen was still the coach? Like, I understand that Indiana did not win the last 2 years, and that means that it was probably time for Tom Allen to go. But if you're going to do this now, the question is, why did you not do this in 2022 when you could have saved Tom Allen's tenure after one bad season? Indiana wouldn't be in the position that it is now. You know, I don't know if the $3 million extra in NIL money would have helped Indiana over the last 2 years, but they got so many guys in the transfer portal anyway that turned out to be pretty good. I think one thing you cannot say about Tom Allen is that he did not identify talent in the transfer portal. He did a really good job of that. And I wonder if there were guys that he could have gotten that were even better and more talented had he had some extra NIL money. And so maybe it's something where they thought that Tom Allen wasn't going to last. They wanted to invest in the next. They wanted to save the cash to invest in the next coach. But that's not how this works. That you invest in the guy that you have until he's not there anymore. It's great that they're doing it now. To be clear, maybe Tom Allen said what Tom Allen said in his kind of goodbye note that Indiana needs to kind of start investing in this kind of stuff. Maybe it woke some people up, but it should have been happening before now.
Well, it should have, but the basketball is basketball, and that has what fans just don't understand, that basketball, number one, will not carry an athletics program.
It will not. No, it cannot just be a basketball school.
No, because if you are 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to find yourself on the outside looking in.
Yes.
Of what used to be. And this kind of a commitment, this is going to also help them land the right coach. And this is what they have to do. I mean, it is without question. Now, if they had done this, I love Tom Allen as a person. I truly do. He's a great, great man. Love being around him, but he was not a Big Ten head coach. There were too many mistakes that happened that had nothing to do with players. There were just, I mean, I hate to go back to things like the onside kick and the Gator Bowl, but that's kind of where one of the things that stands out. And there are many after that are just, you're like, what the hell? And so the decision-making was not there. I think Tom was too excitable. And when big plays happened, he was very exciting and congratulating players instead of being 2 plays ahead of where they were at that moment, which a head coach has to be. You need to be thinking ahead, not celebrating in the moment, and celebrate after the game. But regardless of that, this is a great sign for Indiana, because it shows that they're finally acknowledging that, hey, we've got to move into the modern era of college football, or we're going to get left behind. There is no permanent membership to the Big Ten, although it used to be that. You would have thought that, and I have said not that long ago that no, that would never happen. I've changed my mind. Yes, it would happen, and it probably will happen. It could happen. It's going to probably shorten even more with college football specifically, because there are teams that are good in basketball that don't even have a damn football program. You look at Butler, who made the final game twice. Well, they actually have football, but there are a lot of Big East teams that don't have football.
Or play small or play low-level football.
Right.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't work anymore. And so Indiana has every opportunity that Kansas did. Kansas was the second worst program in Division I football history. They were terrible. But they got the right guy. And Kansas is fun as hell to watch now.
Yeah.
And they're competitive.
And you know what they did when they got the right guy, when they realized they had the right guy? They gave him resources. They said, we are going to fight to keep you, and we are going to fight to make sure you have what you need to compete. We know you're not going to win national championships, but we feel like you can raise the ceiling of our program, and he has done it. And teams that are nominally considered, quote, basketball schools, unquote, have realized this in recent years, and Kansas has done it. Kentucky has done it. Kentucky found their guy. And people forget, Kentucky used to be the IU of the SEC. It is no longer the IU of the SEC in terms of football. Duke figured it out. They went and invested in their coach, and yeah, he left for Texas A&M, but they invested in their coach, and they had a couple of really good seasons under him. North Carolina went and made a big splashy hire, and has given him a whole bunch of money to go out and get players, and they've got some real talent in that program. There are basketball schools, quote unquote, basketball schools who have realized in the last 5 to 10 years that football is driving the bus here. And it finally seems like IU has realized it too. You know who else realized it and has known it for a while? Purdue. Purdue has invested in the football program significantly.
Oh my God. Their facilities. And that's another thing we've got to talk about with Indiana. Their facilities are rock bottom.
Yes. And they are Indiana's, and you can talk about, well, we're never going to have the facilities that Michigan or Ohio State have. Well, you dang
Not
sure
talking
better,
about that.
You dang sure better have the facilities that Purdue has,
or Northwestern.
Northwestern has dropped where they were planning on dropping $800 million on a new. They dropped hundreds of millions of dollars on a new facility. They were planning on spending $800 million on a new stadium on the riverfront or on the lakefront. Sorry, excuse me. Like. Purdue
they built their new facility is on the lakefront.
Yeah, it's
gorgeous.
And they're building a new stadium. Purdue built that $60 million facility a couple of years ago. That was back in 2016. Like Purdue has invested in the football program in a way that Indiana never has. And there's no excuse for that.
Part of Indiana's problem is because I think part of the Big Ten money has gone outside of athletics.
Okay.
And that is an issue. Athletics are making these dollars, which means athletics are bringing notoriety to the university. Don't take the notoriety and the damn money, or the notoriety will stop coming. You've got to let them reinvest in these programs, especially the most important one, football. Everyone brags about, well, look what Fred Glass did. He took some Big Ten money and enclosed the damn stadium by putting no seats in it. One end has no seats that they enclosed. The other end has a marginal level of extra seats. I mean, is it maybe 1,000 in the, what would that be, the north end? Maybe 1,000 seats there and 0 seats on the other end? Okay. It looks good on paper, but you know what? Good God, tear down that freaking 1969 press box and put something that's a little more modern. Add suites that are above the stadium, not on floor level. They put up temporary suites in the end zones that were like a band stage, which I'm like, that's got to be terrible. Yeah. You can't see jack squat, but a lot to do, but it looks like they're at least moving in the right direction.
Yes. So I think that's fair to say.
What's up next for you, my friend?
Yeah, I will be, obviously I'm covering the coaching search. I have several articles up at journalgazette.net about the search, about why now, about the coaches they should look at, all of that. I was in West Lafayette for Purdue last night. They beat Texas Southern easily. I will be in Bloomington on Friday for IU Maryland, the opener of the Big Ten schedule. So there's that. Just kind of all over the place, as always at this time of year. It's a busy time of year. I'm tracking all the transfer movement for IU, Purdue, and Notre Dame.
We didn't even talk about that. The mass exodus of IU football program. That's been significant.
Yeah. So I have updates on all of that on journalgazette.net. There's a lot of it. So follow there at Dylan Sinn on Twitter, all of that. So.
Well, buddy, we appreciate you, and make sure you give Dylan Sinn a follow. And if you're in the Fort Wayne area, be a subscriber to the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette for all of that information that he works so hard to get. And let me tell you, he's one of the hardest. I'll put him up there with Kyle Neddenriep. Kyle doesn't have to do as much traveling as our friend Dylan does because he's up in Fort Wayne. But I don't know that anyone works any harder than these two guys. Appreciate you, my friend, and I'll see you on.
Yeah, that's great company. Kyle, like you said it already. Kyle is one of the hardest workers I have ever met. So that is great company to be in. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, buddy. We'll see you on Friday.
Sounds great.
Dylan Sinn, the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Much more coming up in the next hour. Kyle Neddenriep himself will be with us, and the Hall of Famer Rick Bozich. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
All right.
Buddy, I thank you very much, man. I wish you could stay on all damn day.
Yeah, no problem, Jim. Yeah, glad to do it. I'm sure I'll see you Friday. I might see you before that. We'll see.
Absolutely. Well, if you come down early, let me know, and I'll take you to dinner to one of our spots.
All right. Sounds great. I'll talk to you later, okay?
And if you ever need a place to stay, just let me know. I've got an extra bedroom.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Sure. Not that I want to be telling everybody else in the world that.
People are going to come knocking on your door.
Hey, buddy, you're welcome anytime.
I got a place to stay in Bloomington.
All right, guys. See you later.
All right, buddy. Have a good one. Let's see. Duke, Kansas, and Kentucky are mediocre at football. Yeah. I first of all, I wouldn't say mediocre just because, first of all, Kansas played in the freaking Big 12 with Texas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State. Not exactly an easy league. Kentucky plays in the SEC, so I'll just stop right there. Duke has risen. Look what Duke did this year. They were ranked. Didn't they beat Notre Dame? Had some good wins this year. How can you be 5-5 in football? Oh, conference play. Well, who's 6-4 in conference play because nobody plays 10 conference games. And 4-6, nobody plays 10 conference games. 5-5, yeah. Even the Big Ten only plays 9. Hey, if you're listening on YouTube, obviously you can hear me right now. Please hit the subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. It makes a huge difference for us. Doesn't cost you anything, man. And might as well hit the notifications toggle so you don't miss a single episode, not just of the show, but also our post-game shows with Todd Leary and any other specials that we will put out. But just hit that subscribe button, man, because I know that 60% of the people that listen are not subscribed. It's mind-boggling. So please just hit the subscribe button. Do us that favor.
All right, Jim. We go live in 5, 4.
What is Kyle? Is Kyle Neddenriep going to join us?
I haven't. he got the email. I'm not sure.
Well, Don got it the other night. Don Fisher, I saw him at the coaches show. He came up and showed me that his arrived at like 6:14 that night.
So strange.
So, but John is still sending these out, right? Huh. Let me text Kyle real quick. All right, you can go if you need to.
Okay. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday, towards the end of November, the 29th. Thanks a lot for being with us. We appreciate you. Of course, lots of you hitting us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Lots to talk about, mostly about Indiana and their search for a new football coach, of course. Matt pointing out that Northwestern, $480 million put into their new stadium. That's a lot. And Indiana doesn't need to build a new stadium, but they do need to build a new press box. And it's not, we call it a press box, it's not just for the press. That's actually the least that it's for, really. When you build those things, they're mostly suites. And Indiana needs to modernize things. They need a damn press box that goes from one end of Memorial Stadium to the other, most likely on the west side, because if you put it on the east side, you'll be staring into the sun, and that would suck. Although that there's more room there, but it's more of a income generator. It makes things look more Division I, and it just all goes into being a better program. And Indiana finally, I truly believe they finally have gotten the memo that they have to get serious about football. Obviously, with the $3 million guarantee NIL input, that's huge. That's gigantic. And I know that there's been a mass exodus of players that we've seen so far. Some very important players, obviously. A quarterback, running back, virtually the entire line. Several of the defensive players. I'm looking for my page. There we go. To pull that up. Some of the names that have hit the portal. Dexter Williams, quarterback who did not get to play this year at all, but he's gone. Brendan Sorsby, your starting quarterback, he's gone, which that would surprises me a little bit because he's a decent quarterback, but he's not a 4 or 5 star looking star quarterback. He has a lot to learn yet. But also a lot of these guys, it doesn't mean that they're gone. Just by entering the portal or announcing that they're going to enter the portal does not mean that they're leaving. They can see who the coach is going to be and then say, oh, okay, I don't want to leave. Miles Jackson, man, that's a tough loss. He's been here for a couple of years, came here originally from UCLA. I'm kind of surprised to see him leave, but he must be a grad transfer, maybe. But, man, he was one of the good ones. Patrick Lucas, another defensive lineman, a senior. He's gone. Ladarius Cox, a defensive lineman. He's gone. James Bonds III, defensive back, also as well. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star joining us. And speaking of football, it was a big weekend. I've been talking about IU football, of course, Kyle, as Indiana in the midst of a coaching search, but also a mass exodus of players from that program. So that is going to be all kinds of stuff to work out. That this is like a Kyle Neddenriep job keeping up with this stuff. I was just we just had Dylan Sinn on with us, and I said, man, between Dylan Sinn and Kyle Neddenriep, the two hardest working guys in the state, probably because of what you do. I already know how busy you are, but Dylan, he covers Notre Dame, Purdue, and Indiana, and he'll be at Bloomington one night and West Lafayette the next night, and he's all over the damn place. But you had a big weekend last weekend. It was a strange, I don't know if I should call it a strange, but not completely normal round of football championships, as the average margin of victory was like 23 or 24 points, which is, I think, was the biggest ever.
It was the biggest, at least in the sixth class era, which that's about, I think, 11 years now of data. So yeah, I mean, and again, you don't know if that's just it's a pretty small sample of 6 games, but yeah, it wasn't a super interesting weekend. Even the closest game, Lutheran and Adams Central, the 1A game was a 7-point game, but it felt like the whole time Lutheran was kind of in command of that game. So yeah, it just wasn't a lot of drama. I mean, there were some good teams, obviously a lot of good players to watch. And, you go up and down the list, that Ben Davis team, the in 6A, the East Central team in 4A, the Chittard team in 3A, all those 3 teams were very, very good for their class. Probably unusually good, I would say. And, they just didn't have opponents that could hang with them. So it led to some, not real interesting games in the second half. And then, the fact that it's not on TV anymore, I think that was a big commentary throughout the weekend as well. People, I think, normally just kind of like to have it on in the background and Thanksgiving weekend or something to flip to, or, maybe people do sit down and watch all 6 games or a lot of them, but didn't have that option this year because of the, and I'm not laying blame to anybody necessarily, but it's just, that was definitely something I think that frustrated people, that they had to go pay for it online, which is probably the future for a lot of things. So that was another thing. And then the private public debate always rages on, but that's another topic, I think, for another day. But yeah, it just wasn't a lot of drama this weekend for sure.
Well, and you said, actually, I would like to talk about that, because that is something that the private versus public, that is something that hadn't really affected Indiana for a long time, I think. But it is starting to now. And when I was in Southern Indiana, close to Louisville, it was always St. Xavier or Trinity, or there's a school in Lexington. I forget which one, Lexington Catholic maybe, but Lexington or Trinity and St. Xavier in Louisville were just dominant in football, dominant in some other things for that same reason. And I'd always wondered, I'm like, it's amazing to me how that has not happened in Indiana, but it has now. It really has. When you see like Cathedral, haven't they moved up 2 damn classes?
Yeah, they have. I mean, it hasn't. It's been a talking point for a while, just not at the top level. It's not a 6A thing necessarily, because you haven't had Cathedral win a bunch of 6A championships, which I think that's probably more of what you're talking about with Trinity and some of those bigger schools in Kentucky. Winning the biggest class. We haven't had that here. It's still been the big public schools. It's been Warren, Carmel, Center Grove, and Ben Davis basically have dominated at the 6A level, and even before that, the 5A level. So, but it's definitely a talking point, because, Chittard, this is their 17th championship. They lead everybody. Cathedral, yeah, they have bumped up 2 classes. They're playing 6A, which to me, it's like way more interesting to have them at 6A, because they're able to hang with those top teams. They're right in there with those teams. So I think it's more interesting for their players probably too to play at that level. But yeah, I mean, you've got the Lafayette Central Catholics, the I think the top 4 champions are all private schools that have won the most championships. And Ben Davis was the first public school to win a 10th championship this weekend. So, and there was 3, it was 3-3 this weekend, public and private. And, it's something I think every state kind of struggles with is how to, how do you approach the public private? And here we've done the success factor, which I think has been I think it's been good. I think there's some tweaks they could make to it to make it better. They are making some tweaks to it also to kind of roll it every year over a 2-year period of success, but they implement it yearly. So I think that's probably a good change, I would think. I mean, it makes it more relevant to your more recent current success, I would say. So, but it's something every state struggles with. How do you, some states don't even have private schools in the same tournament as public, so you completely separate them. I don't know if that's a good thing for at least for our
the only
state.
thing, the difference is I know that the argument down in Louisville was that those schools recruit and they can actively recruit and they truly can. They can offer scholarships to come to their school, and that's an advantage that the public schools don't have. Not only can they not recruit, they have to, in Indiana, you have to live in the district and various other things. So it's a distinct advantage.
Oh yeah. I mean, and there's all kinds of, those private schools can, they kind of control their enrollment to a certain extent too. I think if you look at the overall percentage of athletes in a private school compared to just the normal student who doesn't play sports, there's way more athletes by percentage so if you're just judging enrollment to enrollment, I don't know that that's a fair comparison to judge publics to privates. I know it's not, looking at the numbers, and you can't tell me there's the same number of, just take a look at the sidelines and how many kids are playing. I'm not saying, and there's schools that, there's private schools that don't, that can't recruit, or they don't recruit, or, so you can't just judge everyone the same. And honestly, there's public schools who, with open enrollment here, I mean, there's all kinds of public schools recruiting too, so, it's a slippery slope when people are like, well, this is this way and this is the other way. And there's no comparison between the two, or they're completely different. I would argue against that, to be honest with you. So, but there are distinct advantages also for the private schools. And, I think that's the issue is how you implement those advantages into a tournament system where you're including everybody. And I think that's hard to do. Excuse me, hard to do sometimes. That's why every state kind of has something different that they do. So, but yeah, I don't know that having a separate tournament is the way I would go necessarily, but I guess to each their own.
Let's see. And Dr. Drew says any good football player in an IPS district goes to Cathedral and gets paid. I don't know about that, but they getting paid?
I mean, getting paid, I don't think that's the case. Unless there's some real evidence there. I'm not really, people throw stuff out there. I don't know that that's the case.
Yeah, that's a different one. What was there any shockers to you besides these massive score differences and the beatings? Was the beatdowns on any of these surprising?
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe the biggest surprise was the 5A game. I would say I thought that would be the best game of the bunch, and it didn't really turn out that way. Decatur Central and Fort Wayne Snyder, that to me, I thought that was going to be a really high scoring game, had the opportunity to be maybe the best game, most competitive game. And it was 7-6 at halftime. Snyder led, but Decatur just couldn't get anything going on offense. And, Snyder, Uriah Buchanan, their running back, got loose a couple times on long runs, and they just were able to kind of pull away in that game. So, that was probably the biggest, the biggest case of surprise, I would say. And I was real impressed with Adams Central in 1A. I think that all 3 years they've lost to Lutheran, but they've been right in there. They've hung right in there and made it really competitive against Lutheran, where I think a lot of people thought that they wouldn't. It's unfortunate for them. They had 3 great teams that they ran into the same program every time, and Lutheran's really at the top of their game. Now both those teams will move up to 2A. So we will see some, talking about the private school issue, we will see some movement with those teams moving up a level. And I did write about that and included everybody who's moving up, down, or staying the same. And a lot of it is the private schools. Lures in 2A is moving up. Chittard in 3A is moving up. Lutheran and Adams Central in 1A are moving up a class. So you've got a lot of schools that'll be moving up next year for the next 2-year cycle. So that'll change kind of the landscape of things going into next year.
And speaking of all these high school players, Indiana right now in the midst of a coaching change, which I don't know how much that's going to impact any players that are out there, but I know that there are some that have committed to Indiana, and right now that's a little in flux. But I would think that this is a more exciting time for Indiana football because, and only because, they're showing a commitment already. They have announced a commitment of $3 million in NIL money next year. That is huge because that's more than they paid out in NIL to IU football in totality. I can guarantee you that. They know that they have to get a good coach, that they have to make a good hire, and I think it is going to be one that is offensively minded. And I just think that they know that they can no longer be a basketball school because football pays the bills. And depending upon who this coach is, I think that there may be finally a change in how Indiana football is viewed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fresh start, I think. Now, whether you can kind of make that fresh start and make headway in the Big Ten is another question altogether, considering who you're up against and what those schools are doing. You're not only in a vacuum of what you're doing; you're competing against, your constituents in the Big Ten as well. And it's only getting stronger with the addition of the Pac-12 schools coming in. So I don't know. I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's always going to be an uphill battle, really, for the whole, all of these Big Ten West teams and Indiana, and it's just seems like an uphill climb. College sports has changed so much in the last several years that it just feels like you're not fighting in the same footing with a lot of these top programs, and it's those teams seem to get stronger every year, and everyone else is kind of trying to get there. So I don't know. That's just me looking at it from the outside. But I do, from a recruiting standpoint, I do think the in-state kids who are committed to IU are definitely keeping that. If the new coach, still wants them, I think they're going to be willing to come there and be part of that. I think it is exciting for it is exciting for them to come into that situation where you got some new blood coming in, and like you said, an opportunity possibly to earn some more money, at the college level, which is obviously a good thing for those students.
Anything? What's up next for you? Now that football's all over, you get to take a week off, right?
Yeah, not necessarily. I wish there was a couple weeks.
So
I wish there was a couple weeks in between basketball. But yeah, I was out at the game last night, and the Sneakers for Santa thing this weekend at Brownsburg should be really good with a lot of top teams from the states and top prospects and things like that. So, and then Friday, I think I've got Fishers in Noblesville. So that'll be a good one. So yeah, working on a lot of football postseason stuff. And then, obviously basketball's already here. So it's a busy time still.
Absolutely. Kyle Neddenriep, make sure you're giving him a follow, be a subscriber, keep local papers alive. I am a subscriber. Kyle, I appreciate you very much, my friend.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.
You bet. Have a great day. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star joining us. Up next, Rick Bozich, once he gets out of traffic, will be joining us, and we will continue all the discussions we have had. college basketball, college football, whatever's going on. We've got a lot to get to. Back with it right after this from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Where does not to like ask for his information?
Whoops.
Does Rick live in Indianapolis?
No.
Okay. I was wondering where traffic. After living in LA, I kind of like turned my nose up to traffic. Like,
oops. Yeah, traffic happens anywhere, but at this time that means there could be an accident.
Yeah, true.
You never know. You just never know. Hey, if you're joining us, if you're just now joining us, make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube, please. I'm really pushing that. I want to hit. We've had a fair amount of new subscribers this month, but there's a number I want to hit, and we're not that far from it. So please hit the subscribe button. We'd appreciate it. UConn wins record 24th non-conference game in a row by double digits. So if you think Indiana looked bad in that UConn game, UConn is good. This record dates back to the start of last season and includes all 6 of UConn's NCAA tournament games in its national championship run. It's great to share a record.
Isn't it crazy they have the same coach that we beat with Joey Brunk, like a clunky, what was it, 52-50, 54-52 overtime game? And I think it was Madison Square Garden. It was like right before COVID.
Man, I don't
remember that game.
That. I do not.
Yeah, it was the Joey Brunk season. But I remember it was the same coach because he and Archie had some history, or they'd worked together somewhere, or I don't remember what the history between Dan Hurley and Archie Miller was, but they were affiliated somehow. But hey, Rick is here, so I'll count you guys in. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Joined now by the great one, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Make sure you're giving him a follow. He is one of the foremost sports reporters in this region. Rick, thank you, sir. Great to see you. I know you've been busy. Lots of things going on with college basketball, Kentucky, Louisville, Indiana, and of course now Indiana looking for a new football coach. And they seem to have finally gotten the memo, Rick, that and I say that because it was been announced that there is a pledge of $3 million in NIL funds towards football. That I guarantee you that's more than has been paid out in totality up to this point. Without it, probably not even close, as a matter of fact. So for Indiana, that's a lot of money. That may not be Texas money or Michigan money, but that's a lot of money, and that can get a lot of players because they put together. They've had decent teams and they've had good talent. They may not have had, again, Michigan or Ohio State or Alabama talent, but they've had good talent that can win games without that. So this is only going to make that better. And I think that they finally understand that they cannot walk down the hall and hire their coach because they can get him cheap and whatever. I've been, this may not have anything to do with it, but I've been tracking a private plane that left Bloomington and has just made several stops all around the South for about 4 to 5 hours at a time. And
where were the stops?
Trying to match all those up. On the 18th, which was over a week ago, but I think on a Friday, that would have put him in Batavia, Ohio, near Columbus, which I don't know if that was over there to talk to Justin Fry, which I don't see him as a legitimate candidate. But after that, from Monday, the plane went to Atlanta, Georgia, Atlanta Hartsfield, and was there for quite some time. It left there and went to Cordell, Georgia, where it stayed there overnight and then left early in the morning. And from there, it went to Leesburg, Florida, which is close to Orlando, I believe. And then it stopped in Newberry, South Carolina, which is near Columbia, South Carolina. And now they are on the move again, just crossing the North Carolina border as we speak.
Wow, you're doing some detective work. First of all, I apologize for being a few minutes late today. I got caught in traffic taking Ruby to doggy daycare. But anyway,
that's the most important thing. Ruby
yes,
is important.
The Atlanta stop, I can understand. That's where the Parker search firm is. I know they're using a search firm. I don't know if it's Parker, but that's where a lot of the stuff goes down. You can get into Atlanta without people seeing you, and
right.
They have a facility there and a bunch of you can do like remote Zoom type interviews with people without flying them in. I'm surprised that we're talking about this. I know that you were pretty convinced, I think, that they were going to make a change from following Indiana football for as long as I have, which I can still remember the Rose Bowl season. I've never seen them really have the urgency to compete in football. Maybe this is the two things we mentioned, the coaching change and the $3 million in NIL money that's been committed. And they made sure they got that out there yesterday. So whoever's considering the job knows that they're going to be coming in without, being 50 yards down the field from the middle of the pack in the Big Ten as more of an encouragement, because I'm sure there are people that are telling them you don't want to go there. It's a coach killer, job, because most of the guys who I looked back last night, I think the only guy who did not get fired at IU was over the last 50 some years was Terry Hepner, who passed away. Isn't that right?
That sounds about right.
Allen got fired. Wilson got fired. Lynch got fired. DiNardo got fired. Cameron got fired. Mallory got fired. Corso got fired. Weiss left on his own after 1 year.
Yes.
And John Pond got fired. So they all got fired. But, it's way past time. It should have happened in the 90s. But the institutional commitment to making football a priority has to be there. And I think the commitment has to also come from the fans, not in terms of showing up, but putting pressure on the administration to get it right. And I think they've started to do that. And shows like this and other podcasts that have been critical of Indiana football play a role in it too. I mean, for a long time, it was sort of just shrugged off. And more people now are putting pressure, I think, on the administration to say, hey, you can't continue this way. You're going to get left so far behind. And as these conference realignment things keep going, Indiana's in a very vulnerable position.
Yeah, well, I for one thing, obviously the change in college athletics, it has been massive. I mean, it's a 180. It is night and day, the difference. So and Scott Dolson knows this is riding on his back. He's carrying, This is a big old pack of weight he's got to carry, because he's the one that wrote that check or had Indiana have to write that check to Tom Allen. So that's on his watch. And now he has to get this right. Whether this is a basketball school or not, this has to become a football-driven athletics department. It can be a basketball school all at once, but the athletics department has to be driven by football. And for that to happen, you have to commit to it. Besides the NIL, now they've got to work on facilities. Their facilities suck. They're one of the worst in the Big Ten. Northwestern has better facilities than Indiana. They made that commitment. And Purdue has made that commitment with the brand new facilities that they have built and the enhancements to their stadium. The stadium is fine at IU. It's the other things. It's the indoor workout facility that looks like it's just an oversized garage. You walk in there and it's like, wow, there's nothing that excites you when you go in there. But it's just a whole how football is looked at. People, the fans, I'm just waiting for basketball season. I'm just waiting for basketball season. That has to stop. It has to be a two-pronged thing. You have to be charged up and have confidence in the program. And I get that there has to be something to have confidence in. And I think that they finally get it. I don't know who the coach is going to be, but I think it is going to be someone that it would not have been 3 years ago. This is a different hire than it would if just 3 years ago. Someone like whether it's Tom Herman or Dave Clawson from Wake Forest, whoever this ends up being, I don't know. There's just a lot of names out there, and I'm not going to try to guess who it is. But I got to thinking Gus Malzahn yesterday. I'm like, well, what's his deal with Central Florida? Because I looked up and he wasn't making a ton, and I'm like, he's been a real successful coach that's kind of sitting there. I don't know if he's in the mix or not, but man. But Tom Herman is a very interesting one because he's at FAU and he was at Houston and Texas. He knows about offense. And I don't care that he got fired from Texas because Shaka Smart got fired from Texas. And look what he went and did. He went and took Marquette and made them a better program than Texas is. So the importance of making this hire, and this is not something Indiana has done well, Rick, hire football coaches.
No, you're right. It's a signature hire for Scott Dolson. It's going to be whenever his tenure at IU ends, and I hope it's not for a long time because I like Scott.
Yes,
this is what will be high in his legacy. What did he do with football? How did he make a difference with football? And you're right. They need to create a product that excites people and fill the seats in the stadium that they have. You can't keep playing in a league with schools that are putting in 80, 90, 100,000 people for 6 or 7 football games, and you're putting in 35 or 40,000 and opting out of series with schools like Louisville because you don't want to take 2 losses. You can't operate. That's out of weakness. You got to operate out of strength, and they've got to find a really good coach, but they've also got to find somebody with a vision who can sell that vision to players, who can sell it to fans, who can sell it to the media, and who can sell it with boosters that can make a difference in terms of contributing to facilities. I always, we've talked about this before. One of the greatest benefits of working in this market is I see how Indiana does things, I see how Louisville does things, and I see how Kentucky does things. There is no reason that Indiana can't have a football program that should be as good as Kentucky or Louisville's, but it hasn't. And why is that? Because it hasn't committed to doing that. Louisville, 40 years ago, swung for the fences and got Howard Schnellenberger, and he changed the whole perception of Louisville football. They built a new stadium. They recruit now. Then they go out and they steal Purdue's coach, man. They went to the Big Ten and took a Big Ten coach away. You look at Kentucky, they bounced around for a number of years. They finally got Rich Brooks in there, who had been successful at Oregon and then got fired from the Rams. And he came in there and he changed the way they think about football. And then they had Joker Phillips and he took it off course, but they got rid of him just like that because it's like, no, they're not going to put up with losing. And they brought in Mark Stoops, and he's made them a formidable team in the SEC East. We both remember in the 80s and 90s, Indiana won its share of game against Kentucky. They're not the same level program anymore. So it's got to be the right coach, but it's got to be the right commitment by Indiana to being serious about football.
Yeah, and it's got to be a guy that can have a dynamic personality, I think, because he is going to have to save the players that haven't left, which may be easier to count than those that have entered the portal already. But just because someone's entered the portal does not necessarily mean that you will not see them on the Indiana roster next year.
Right.
They're just saying, hey, man, I'm putting my name out there.
But see what kind of offers I can get. Yeah.
And that's what you do. They would be ill-advised not to do that. But he's also going to draw in some people that you probably wouldn't have had, especially with whomever it is. If it's a particular offensively minded coach that likes to throw the ball or whatever, that may be how you get a better quarterback. That's how you don't lose. I'm losing the kid's name that he was committed to Indiana and then decommitted and went to TCU.
Hoover.
Yes, Josh Hoover. You get guys like that and keep them. Indiana has lost 5 quarterbacks to the portal in the last 3 years as of right now, with Sorsby and Dexter Williams in there, Jack Tuttle, Bazelak, and then Michael Penix Jr. So
they lost. How many recruits did they have? They lost. McCullough went to Oklahoma. They had that commitment from the running back from Cincinnati who's playing at Notre Dame. Payne, I think his name is. There have been way too many of them. And it almost looked like this year, and it's one of the reasons that I was convinced that Tom Allen had lost all momentum. When you look at a lot of the guys they got commitments from in the high school recruiting class, they weren't recruiting against other Big Ten schools. They were recruiting against MAC schools for the most level. And I think that you can coach a few guys up, but you can't have an entire class of guys who you're going against Appalachian State and Toledo. And I know the Toledo coach is a possibility for IU or Ohio University or wherever. You've got to be able to go in there and get a few guys that other Big Ten schools want.
Robert says that Oklahoma's payroll is about $14 million. I don't know if that's true or not, but whether it is,
that's what Ryan Day has hinted at. Yeah.
Indiana does not. I'm not saying Indiana they don't have to be that. Look, they have drawn enough talent to win games. They had enough talent to be bowl eligible this year.
Yeah, they did.
It was mistakes. It was bad calls. It was not having a quarterback in place to start with. And the OC, all of this different stuff that just went into just really taking that season down, and they could have been successful. Now, if you add $3 million to that, now you're going to have more success. You may not be challenging for the college football playoffs right now, but you're going to be looking at a bowl every year at least. So that's a gigantic step up. And then you go from there. If you can garner some success, you build on that success.
Yeah. They need to be able to punch at their own weight, and their own weight would be Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, Northwestern for sure, Maryland, Rutgers. There's no reason to lose 3 in a row to Maryland and Rutgers. They can't accept that. Not beating Ohio State and Michigan most years, that's probably going to be the way it is. But you ought to be able to beat them once every 10 years, not once every 50 years. And that's one thing I go back to Stoops. He's changed the dynamic of he's beat Tennessee. He's won 3 of the last 5 against Florida. He's changed the way people think about Kentucky football, and that's part of what the new coach has to do. Sell his vision for how they're going to do that. What's your identity going to be? What are you trying to achieve at IU? How are you going to do it? Missouri's another one. They hired Eli Drinkowitz. Missouri they had some success under Gary Pinkel, then they lost other momentum. They brought Drinkowitz in, and now this year they've only lost 2 games, and they're going to go to a really good bowl game. And what are they known as? A really good passing program. When Bazelak was the quarterback there and he didn't produce it the way they needed, they recruited right over him, and he went out in the portal. That's the way you have to operate your team.
Yeah, and hopefully Indiana will see what they have left over. And
what's your sense? Who would you like, and what's your sense of who they're really serious about?
You know what? I have no idea who they're really serious about. Okay. But a name that I like is Grubbs, the Kalen DeBoer's offensive coordinator. He's been with Kalen since before Fresno State, before he came to Indiana, and then he's been his OC. And so when you have a guy that is as good of offensive mind that Kalen is, but yet he has an offensive coordinator that he trusts, I'm like, whoo, that guy, he's got someone he's learning from. And I like how Kalen runs things. So this is where he has learned. He's learned a lot from Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer has been a winner everywhere he's gone. I like him for that reason. He's young. He can invigorate things. That's probably my personal favorite, but I don't have any dislikes other than some of the crazy names that have been thrown out there that have no chance. Gruden, Rod Carey, there was one more, I think. But yeah, Gruden is.
Mike Hart's name seemed to be hot yesterday.
Yeah, there's no way he's would
not even been a coordinator yet, right?
Well, I think that Dylan Sinn made the best comment about that. He goes, he probably thinks he's going to be the Michigan coach in a couple of months.
Yeah.
So
I don't think he's even the number one guy there. Sharon Moore is. I'm not in favor, and I don't even know if he's legit or not. It's Paul Chryst of Wisconsin. I mean, he's okay, but he was a Wisconsin guy in the Wisconsin system, and kind of they've run the football, and I don't think you can replicate that formula to IU and win. And we saw what Bielema did there, and he's gone off to Arkansas and now Illinois and failed, not being at Wisconsin. So I'm not sure Chryst is the guy. Herman, I'm not sure about. He was a really hot name, obviously, 8 or 10 years ago before he went to Houston, and then he was even hotter at Houston and went to Texas and didn't do well there. It's hard to. A lot of guys haven't done well at Texas. He's got Midwest roots. He coached at Ohio State. He seems to be very personable, but I don't know if he's the right guy for the job. You mentioned I think Clawson would be if he'd be interested, or Malzone. Those are two names that I think are fascinating.
I do too. I mentioned that to Bob Kravitz yesterday, and he's like, "Ooh," he goes, "That's one I hadn't really thought of," and I forget why it came to me. I was just looking around, like, "Hey, what about Gus Malzahn? He's sitting there at Central Florida in a Big 12 that is no longer going to be the Big 12 that it was with the loss of Texas and Oklahoma. He's got money from Auburn. They paid him $21 million, and he's making about $4 million right now. It's going to go up to $5 million. So Indiana's going to have. I think Indiana is going to have to pay $5 to $6 million, or maybe more, to start at a minimum $6 million probably. They've got to. That's another thing they've got to do. Tom Allen was still one of the lowest paid coaches in the Big Ten, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go this far, you need to go all the way and do it right. If you're really committed to doing it, and I don't know how they find the money or what their financial situation is, or when the new Big Ten television money comes in. But if you're going to actually do this and pay a guy $15.5 million not to coach, you need to get it right, or try your best to get it right, and try and get a coach who will energize the fan base, because the fans were energized in 2020 and 2020. Well, they couldn't be there in 2020, but they were energized in 2021 when they were anticipating such a big season. Then it all fell apart with the loss to Iowa and then the loss to Cincinnati. So, it's a tough job. The guy who comes into it's going to have to be really hard-nosed and a positive thinker, because there's a lot of obstacles to overcome. But if you can do it, it's quite an achievement, because really nobody's done it.
Yeah, and they've shown that they will show up, even against Cincinnati a couple years ago when they came in, and probably should have won that game. But we've got more to talk about. Basketball actually is, and the college football playoff scenario is in play as well. We've got more here. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with me now, back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
They lost a good one when Sean Lewis off the market.
Yeah, he went to San Diego State.
Yep. Dan Mullen, he's out, which I didn't like that anyway. Louisville, FSU, man, that's going to be that's an exciting matchup, at least on paper.
Yeah. We'll see how Louisville bounces back. They're a little down after losing that game to Kentucky.
Where is this game played? Charlotte?
Charlotte. Here's the latest from Peegs that Charles Huff, Chuck Martin, and Ryan Silverfield are off the hot board. Mike Hart did his Zoom interview last night.
I had Ryan Silverfield yesterday. That's the Memphis coach.
It says he's out.
Yeah. It's so funny sitting here
What do you think will happen to Tom Allen?
That's a great question. If I'm Tom Allen, you don't ever hear from me again. I'm going to take my $30 million that I got in the bank and bye-bye, baby. I'm going to go buy an island. But
I think he still wants to coach.
That's not Tom Allen. He is too much jacked up.
We haven't even mentioned the guy that a lot of people think is number one on the list, the Toledo guy.
Candle. Is it Candle?
Yeah.
All right, guys. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. Rick Bozich from WDRB.com with me now. We have been talking about, of course, the Indiana football coaching search, which we could probably sit here and do for hours with the different candidates. Rick mentioned in the break, we hadn't even talked about Jason Candle from Toledo, who is probably up at near the top of the list as well, as they had a great year. So it's going to continue. I think this happens fast. How quickly do you think this happens?
I would think it would happen by next Monday at the latest. That'd be my guess. Yeah. What about you?
No later than that at all. Absolutely. They don't have a choice because they continue to the transfer portal. The longer it goes, the more the greatest possibility of actually losing these guys.
Considering how decisively they acted after the Purdue game, they must have been fairly certain they were going to make a change.
I think the decision
after the Illinois game, probably when it was assured they weren't going to go to a bowl game. And if that's the case, then you start doing your homework ahead of time, and you're already trying to find out legitimately who might have some interest.
Indiana takes on Maryland Friday night on the hardwood to open up Big Ten play, which will be a challenge for Indiana as Maryland comes in, although they have not had a good start to their season.
Yeah, they're okay. They won a big game last night against a bad team. I think it was Ryder or something like that. It wasn't a good team. They've lost, 2 or 3? But, they've got a really good guard. He's first team all Big Ten, I think, right? Their backcourt guy. Let me find here.
Yeah, they were great at home last year.
Jameer Young. They lost 3 in a row. They lost to Davidson, UAB, and Villanova. Now Villanova's a good team. Playing at home, Indiana needs to win the game. I mean, it's their
absolutely
of the next 4, it's their most winnable game because then they've got Michigan on the road, Auburn in Atlanta, and Kansas at home. They need to win the game. And they need
because they can lose all 3 of those.
Although they're 5-1, they're lucky they're not 3-3. And if you go back and look at some of the teams, I've gone back. Florida Gulf Coast, the team they played the first game. You know what their record is?
Probably
1-6.
Whatever. 1-6.
1-6. They beaten a Division III team, Ave Maria.
I wonder how many 3-pointers they've hit in those 6 games, in those other 5 games.
You know what Army is? Army's 0-6. So those 2 teams that Indiana started the season, and Wright State is 2-4. So those 3 teams that Indiana really wasn't great against to start the season aren't very good. So they got to play better. And to me, it's very apparent. They got to get better guard play. I mean, the guard play has been subpar.
It's been non-existent.
And I don't know what's going on with Trey Galloway. But he's not had a good start to the season in terms of any kind of offensive production. CJ Gunn really hasn't produced. Xavier Johnson's been hurt and up and down. Gabe Cupps is just a freshman. Somebody in that backcourt is going to have to step forward, or they're going to have big problems this year.
Without question, they have had just not only they're not getting scoring, they're not getting rebounds from the guards. You look at Braden Smith last night; he was 1 rebound short of a triple-double, which is incredible.
Right.
So, but they have got to get production from the guards. Have been saying that they're not getting scoring from any of these guys. They're not looking for shots. Teams that they play, man, they're 3 feet from the 3-point line, and the ball hits their hands, and they're ready to take the shot. Indiana's not even looking for that. And unfortunately, Indiana's best 3-point shooters are their post players.
Ware is definitely their best 3-point shooter. Yeah.
And Indiana has done so well in the post, but it's kind of like last year, and it's like they're falling into this habit of last year. Well, hey, let's just feed everything to the post, because Malik Renew and Kel'el Ware have been doing so well. Renew has been very, very consistent, and Ware he's been consistent but getting better each game. He seems becoming more and more confident.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why they're doing it because that's their best and most productive players, but I don't think it's not a sustainable formula for success over the entire season. Once you get into the Big Ten, and I know that teams are going to pack, the middle of the lane and make it hard. They're going to be doubling Ware, they're going to be doubling Renew and force them to use his right hand, and they're going to be forcing some of these IU players to make shots. And I'm not sure if that they're going to be able to do that. And I'm not sure it's a fixable problem this year. They need to get some different guards on the team who can shoot the ball and create offense for themselves. I don't see that in this group. I really don't. I mean, Galloway is not a shooter, never has been. He was a good set shot guy last year from the three, but it's not going in this year. And Xavier Johnson is an okay shooter, but he's not what you would call a pure jump shot guy, right? And, Gunn has never been able to relax and make shots. Newton's hurt.
Mbako is where I think they expected Mackenzie Mbako to be the guy that could be a knockdown shooter, and it just hasn't happened for him yet. Although he scored 18 points in the last game, he was 1 of 7 behind the arc. And even though his very first shot went in, it ended up being a 2. It was over in the corner, looked smooth, and he ended up hitting a 3-point shot. He missed the rest of them, and if he doesn't get going, this team is in for a rough season, and I don't know that they can make the tournament as they are right now.
I don't think so. I mean, here's the two numbers that jump at me. This is on Ken Palm. In terms of 3-point shooting percentage, they're at 24%, which ranks 348 out of 362 teams. That's not going to work. And in terms of percentage of shots that you take from the 3-point line, they're taking a quarter of their shots from there, and that ranks 349th in the country. So they don't want to take threes, and when they do take them, they can't make them. That's a bad formula. That's not the way modern college basketball is played, and that's been apparent for a number of years. I don't get it, and it's going to have to be addressed. I don't think it can be fixed this season. It's going to have to be fixed going forward. So we'll see.
Yeah, I really don't understand the offense, I'll be honest with you, because there doesn't seem to be sets run. They don't seem to be running sets to get open 3-point shots. I guess they're just hoping that happens by feeding the post.
I think they feel like they don't have the shooter, so why get guys open for shots they can't make? Go to the inside guys. They can score and will score and go to the line. That would be my guess. They've analyzed their team and say, this is where we're strong and we're going to have to play this way. So, I mean, I understand that, but I'd say moving forward, you got to change that. And Indiana hasn't had a 3-point shooter since who? James Blackman? I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. Archie Miller started this, and Woodson has yet to fix it.
Well, and I will say, Woodson is not really. I know he had Jalen Chifino, but that's the only guard that he has gotten in here. Cups.
Well, I think they thought Newton was going to be a really good player, and unfortunately he hurt his knee, and that's been a setback. Because I think they really thought Newton was going to be an important part of this team. But yeah, they've gone after other guards and didn't get them. And I hate to keep bringing up Kentucky, but did you watch Kentucky last night, the way they played?
I did.
Yeah. Their guards.
Reed Shepherd looked like a pro.
He looked like a pro. He looked like Larry Bird. And they got Wagner, they got Dillingham, they got Reeves. They got 4 dudes who could shoot threes. If you don't guard them, they will bury you from the 3-point line. And Cal's been a 3-point resistor, and I think he finally figured out I got to find a different way to play than dribble, drive, and pick and roll. I got to find ways to get my guys perimeter shots. Guys like to play that way. You play at a faster pace. Fans like to watch that. It's the way the modern game is played. Indiana's been outscored from the three-point line in every game this year, and sometimes by a large amount. And once you get against better teams, that's not going to work.
The point differential was at least 90 points, and that was before the last game,
right?
In which they hit 9 of 7 or 8 of 17 in the first half, but although they did shut them down in the second half, Harvard to 1 of 9 in the second half. Florida State, Louisville, we're about out of time, but Florida State and Louisville this weekend to decide whether or not Florida State can make it into the college football playoffs. This is a game I think Louisville has a shot at.
Yeah, if they can bounce back emotionally. They just lost a tough game to Kentucky at home. And a lot of people are kind of, Jeff Brown was very angry after the game, and he should have been because they gave it away with 2 fumbles and giving up a kickoff return.
That fumble by Plummer was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was very careless. But, they're only a 3-point underdog, neutral site. They got a chance. They got motivation to knock Florida State out of the game. Although Eric Crawford pointed out they're actually better off if they lose, because if they lose, Florida State will be in the playoff and Louisville will go to the Orange Bowl. If they win, Florida State could be knocked out of the playoff. Florida State goes to the Orange Bowl, and Louisville gets the Gator Bowl.
That's hilarious. Well, at least you get to go to Jacksonville where they have Whataburger.
Yeah.
So I love it.
They got Wawa there, too.
What's up next for you?
Tonight, Bellarmine against Louisville, a must-win for the Louisville Cardinals.
Oh, wow, they're playing Bellarmine tonight. Wow, yeah, they lost to Bellarmine last year, right?
Yes, they did, and nobody has forgotten that. So, yeah.
Cannot forget that. Scotty Davenport, what a great guy. And, of course, Kenny Payne, so 2 good guys there. Well, brother, I appreciate you as always. Look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. I'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Rick Bozich, WDRB.com, and that's going to wrap it up for us today here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Big thanks to Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, and, of course, Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. RC for keeping us between the white lines. I think John is back tomorrow. He's been on assignment. Big thanks to you guys. Without you, we have no reason to be here, and we look forward to it each and every day, especially all you guys that are hitting us up on the Andy Moore Honda hotline, and I encourage all of you to do that. If you're following us on radio, thank you very much for all the peeps down in Evansville on ESPN 97.7 The Ref, up in the region on WJOB, and over in Fort Wayne, 1380 The Fan. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you. Until tomorrow, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.